And we're live.
Huzzah!
And we're back with class.
Yes.
Nicholas's favorite show. He had to talk about it twice this week.
It's called Detained, and I was actually really looking forward to this because, I love how this happens. Last episode is the one where I just let myself say that this show is dumb. And then this episode comes and I really like it. I really like this episode. It's not just good by the standards of this show. It's not just better than the other episodes. It's just good.
I have to say, I did like this one as well, but most of my problems are at the very beginning in the premise, which we will get to. This is basically a bottle episode. Everybody's just kind of stuck in the classroom.
Which means that Ness has to show some restraint and we can't constantly cut between two conversations.
Yes, which is weird because I thought for sure they were going to have Quill and have that happening with her throughout this episode, and it never did happen.
I feel like we were close to getting that. Someone in the editing room was or someone in the conceptual stage was we could have made this one episode of just Quill and the classroom, and we could have cut between the two. And some miracle worker was just no, don't do that.
I could see him in the editing room, someone with a knife, stabbing somebody in the hand. No, we will have one episode where we will not cut and edit it 50,000 times.
Or worse, I imagine at some point someone was let's make this a two-part episode since there's enough material for an episode with each subplot and cut between them across the two episodes. I don't know.
They may have shown some restraint because we just got done with a two-parter.
That's true. Although this is still technically one. Whatever, we'll get to that later. But yeah, that might be a big part of why I liked it. It's just one setting, let the characters just interact for a little bit. This is also the first episode where I can't complain about any character stuff. No one has any glaringly inhuman or out-of-character dialogue. The jokes actually made me laugh quite a bit. I laughed a lot at this episode. I'm trying to look at what specific lines. When he starts having a panic attack, Mateus is you're having a panic attack. And he's what is that? It's an attack of panic. Oh! There's a moment where Charlie puts his hand through the door and it comes out the other side, and Ram is just whoa.
I mean, you can kind of make the excuse the characters are being kind of unlikable here because they're being influenced to be angry, which I'm not really sure what was the point of that.
Well, I mean, for one, we need more drama because they're all chummy throughout the whole 45 minutes, then there's not really all that much conflict.
True.
And second of all, it's I like that part of it is the influence of the stone just affecting their demeanors, and another part is they're letting out all of these insecurities, and that was going to cause some tension and some high emotions regardless. And so it's it is the stone, but it is also what's in them that's making this happen.
True, but I think we could have gone without that. They're already in a confined space. They're already kind of jerks. And, the stone's already, like you said, making them tell the truth. So tensions are going to be high no matter what. So we didn't have to have the anger thing just added on top of it, I think.
I'm sure I agree with that. I mean, out of all of them, Charlie and Ram are the only ones with, consistently jerkish tendencies. And even then, with Charlie, it's only toward Quill. Mateus is just a cool dude. April is composed. She knows when she's not being influenced by the Shadowkin, she knows how to, handle herself. Tanya is kind of a know-it-all, but that's about it. I feel there needed to be something heightening the emotions in this episode. Outside of Charlie, having claustrophobia, which gives him a thing when the stone doesn't affect him as much.
Yeah, I mean, they had to have drama, but I mean, we have seen these characters be very jerkish in the other episodes, so I think it could come out naturally and nobody would notice.
There are clearly going to be, consequences. This episode does not end with them all, back to status quo. Clearly still affected by what happened. Next episode after the next one is going to go into, long-term effects. And so we really need to see how it plays out there before we can say whether or not it was justified to set that up here.
Well, there's only, 2 more episodes?
There is The next one, which is what Quill did, and I think there's two more after that.
We'll have to see, I guess. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, the whole anger thing's strange, but everything about the stone, the prisoner, how they got into another dimension, and the setup for me was just strange.
What, like the fact that it was a prisoner?
A piece of meteor is a prisoner that comes through the rift and that somehow drags them into its own prison in
Hmm.
another dimension.
It's a conceit. You just gotta get over it so that we can get to the content.
Yeah, pretty much.
Although,
Basically, my biggest problem with this, the setup, it just feels like a bunch of really weird, stupid crap happened. It's just so we can get to the more interesting setup.
but I do like the concept. I like the concept of being like taken out of space and time. I like the concept of this like prisoner that forces you to confess your like insecurities before it'll confess anything. Like I don't know. I felt like this is another really creative idea, and unlike last week and unlike Night Visiting, it's not by weird, stupid dialogue and character choices.
Actual episode is fine once you get into it, but it's just getting like the setup is just a mess.
Another reason for the anger thing, besides just adding to the drama, is that it does add to the tension because there is sort of a looming threat. Eventually, they might be driven to actually kill each other, and that's more of an immediate, oh no, we have to get out of here than just we might starve to death eventually.
The prison you can't die in, you can't age, you can't starve to death. So eventually somebody's gonna go crazy and kill one another. They mentioned something. Prisoner had like 4 other people with him and they all killed each other apparently.
There were 5 of them, just like there are 5 of the main characters, and the prisoner that we're interacting with in this episode killed the other 4. Parallel thing, like this is what could have happened. One of them could have snapped and killed the other 4 in the room. And I will admit, the one line of dialogue that I really didn't like is in the beginning, when the meteor first shows up and it hits the wall and there's like an explosion, and we linger on the explosion in slow motion, and then Mateus's response like 2 seconds later is, "What was that? An earthquake? You saw the explosion. It was an yeah."
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, I'm
Mm.
trying to figure out. I feel like this prison thing could probably have worked without the prisoner. Why couldn't it just been like, this is a prison and this is a part of it that knocked off and somehow it affected them and it made another prison and the truth telling and the anger is just part of it. It's not the prisoner having any influence on them.
Maybe. I mean, you could do that, but I don't know. Like, then how do they get out? What do you ultimately do in the end to make it stop?
All Charlie did was like hold the stone and then crush it. Maybe it could have been like a mind over matter thing.
No, it's because it like he over confessed it, I guess. I don't know how to put it.
I mean, I know he did something different, but I'm just saying they could have done something like that. The motions and what happens in episodes all very well done. It's just stuff surrounding it is kind of distracting me from otherwise interesting episodes. But I mean, really, the episode is more about them.
I like that we're addressing like how fast April and Ram's romance has been going on. No enough credit to assume that we would have a scene like that where it's like, much as you love me, this happened too fast. I don't trust how fast and how hard you've fallen in love with me.
But yeah, I understand it did happen very fast. And it's nice that they address this.
Yeah, because I mean, can you think of another show where that's happened that they do address that? Like where it's intentionally sort of a whirlwind and they address it as such?
No, not really, not in this moment. This was kind of a problem we had with them in the beginning because it's just like, okay, they're like madly in love in 2 episodes. And then at least they do acknowledge that this is way too fast.
My problem is more just how it starts. The show could have not addressed it, and I would have been fine with like the progression of the relationship once it begins. My issue is that I don't get the sense that they're remotely attracted to each other until the moment they kiss for the first time. So that came out of nowhere, but then once that happens, I'm like, oh, okay, this is just a natural pace for a TV relationship.
I mean, they do have chemistry together. At least that makes it a bit easier to swallow. But at least they do like address, like, okay, this all happened way too fast. We're like madly in love and willing to die for one another after like what 2 episodes.
The one thing that really doesn't work for me, just as far as the two of them together went, was just okay, but why in Night Visiting did you choose right then and there to suddenly be attracted to one another?
It's very awkward how they do get together. It's just kind of out of nowhere, and just even the conversation they're having doesn't really seem to be leading to that.
Oh yeah, this is the one episode where Tanya is like, allegedly she's supposed to be the smart one of the group, and this is the only episode where I buy that.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one that comes up with the holding the stone and coming up with ideas for everything.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just sitting around yelling at each other.
Yeah, they find out what they have to do. Plus, it's the only episode where she doesn't sound like an alien. I mean, I mentioned that last time that she had mostly natural dialogue, but she wasn't in that a lot. She was kind of a background player in that two-parter. Here, she's, front and center, and she doesn't have any glaringly stupid stuff going on. I was just going to ask, how much of her weird dialogue do you think is more of just Ness not understanding age demographics and that her being younger than everyone else?
I don't know. They obviously want to make her different because she is younger.
The whole thing with this episode is that they're all outsiders even amongst each other, but it's like, I don't know. These past several episodes, the fact that she's the youngest hasn't really factored into anything.
No, I felt the little speech that she gives about having to be always the little sister feels bad.
There's nothing in the previous episodes to indicate that. Like, no one coddles her in previous episodes. No one, thinks less of her. No one expects any less of her, so it feels like Ness thought he was doing something where she's treated differently because she's the youngest, but that didn't actually happen.
Yeah, it really is only addressed in this episode. I mean, as far as the little sister thing goes, it's kind of out of nowhere.
Objectively, how old she is. If you hadn't told me that she's supposed to be 3 years younger than the rest of them, I would never have known.
Yeah, she doesn't look that much younger or act that much younger.
Big problem with this episode is that given this setup and given how much I like it, it should be the kind of episode that retroactively makes the rest of the show better in hindsight, but it doesn't.
I feel like they're set up for characters and things that were supposed to be in other episodes, and they just kind of unload it a little bit here, right?
Yeah, it may sound sort of hypocritical to say that it's not a problem. What we're talking about is a problem with this episode, but it's a problem that's the fault of previous episodes not being written better.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta have setup. When you just have things as character traits that should have been there from the beginning, just it doesn't in an episode, it just feels awkward.
Because in any other show, when an episode does something that contradicts or isn't set up by previous episodes, then we consider it just a problem with that episode. But this is a limited series. It's only 8 or 9 episodes. We know because of this episode that all of this little sister stuff was the intent, and that's what we were supposed to be getting out of previous episodes, but those episodes didn't do a good job, so it's more their fault.
Yeah. I mean, this whole series, we talked about this before, we had trouble figuring out, is this supposed to be, one big long story, or is it filler? It's hard to decipher between everything.
I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't feel like Ness came up with that thing for this episode. It feels like he came up with it early on but didn't implement it well until now. I think this episode does lend credence to the idea of this series is just one long string. I don't know if when we're done with these streams I'm ever going to watch this show again, but I will be real interested if at any point I do, how it'll feel to just marathon the whole thing. Look at it almost like a big 8-hour movie. It flows like that, because I almost feel like this was supposed to be binged or something.
It's a bit weird because a lot of the episodes do feel like, filler or self-contained episodes with story elements gathered throughout it.
Yeah, like it feels like everything is building off of each other.
Yeah, it feels like everything's like building up off of each other, and it's all like building up to like a story arc. But it's just kind of awkward when you're watching it like one episode at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it's all character stuff. Like, it's not a story arc in the sense of plot points. I mean, there are plot points building off each other, but I'm talking mostly about character development and how it follows from episode to episode. Like, I feel like I can't make a real solid judgment on any of these characters until I know how they're going to end at the end of the series, assuming that it's not some cliffhanger. This is just the impression that I'm getting, but it feels like, as far as the character goes, we're trying to tell a single story across multiple different episodes and scenarios, and like how they are in every episode is informing each other. And you could argue that's true of any season of any TV show that has like a story going on through each episode, but here it feels weird. I don't know if I'm articulating this right.
It does feel weird. I get what you're saying. It doesn't feel like it's adding up, I guess. And like I won't go into spoilers or anything, but like Angel, like the characters all start a certain way. You can slowly see the transition. I don't really see the like transitions with these characters very well, and it's like the little sister thing just pop up out of nowhere. But like this is like the little sister thing is never mentioned before or indicated, and then shows up here for convenience of the episode, so she has something to confess about. To me, anyway.
I guess the issue is just intent. I don't know where any of these guys are going.
Yeah.
Should by this point, especially Charlie. And that brings me to like the big thing, which is I mentioned last time that I remembered the concept of this episode and that I was going to be disappointed if they didn't like factor Charlie's like relationship with Quill into his confessions and stuff, and they don't do it. That's a really effective scene and I like it, but the one thing that it's missing is just like, okay, he's holding this rock that's making him confess all of his truths, and before he picks it up, he says he's got nothing to be guilty of, and I think he genuinely believes that about himself. Why at no point does he have to tackle the whole Quill being a slave thing? And in the episode, Tanya calls him out on it in a single line. Mention her by name in like your ending monologue, where he's holding the stone and letting everything out. He wants to murder the Shadowkin. Deal wanting to commit genocide against your own natures. I get why that's the thing, but not talk about Quill at all during that moment of all moments.
Yeah, it's a big missed opportunity. Like I was just gonna bring up, I mean, she flat out says you have a slave relationship with Quill, and then they never go back to it.
And then The Rock tries to drag him into it because he's the guiltiest, and I'm like, this sort of works, but not really. Like, genocide is a big deal, but I don't necessarily know if that makes you a guilty person. I would think that enslaving someone and constantly belittling them and dismissing them and not treating them like they're an equal would be something that's worth being the guiltiest.
Really just wants revenge on them, and it's just a thought. They say in a throwaway line that just wishing upon somebody counts as guilt, but
For Rodan, wishing something is the same as doing it. That feels like kind of an easy line when you've already got an obvious explanation for why he would be the guiltiest person in that room. Out of the 5 of them, he's done objectively the worst thing to another person.
Yeah. I keep viewing that. Like, they have a easy out, and then they go out of their way to kind of make a stupid out.
Yeah, but you had it built in. You just needed to devote some lines of dialogue to it.
I don't understand why they keep doing this. We had this conversation last week, like when you finally just gave up and said, the show's stupid. With the connection thing, you just keep doing that. I don't understand. It's like it's so obvious.
This is what I'm talking about, where I don't know where it's going in a bad way. Like, I want to cross my fingers and hold out hope that they'll address it in the finale, because now Quill shows up and she doesn't have the yarn in her anymore. Dynamic a lot. But I don't understand why the perfect time to talk about it would be now for later, and you do address it in later episodes. I'm always going to be wondering, why didn't we at least talk about it here?
Yeah, because it's a perfect opportunity and they didn't take it. Makes me wonder if they would have ever talked about it. I mean, we still got 2 or 3 episodes left, so maybe they do, but I kind of doubt it at this point.
They have to because she isn't a slave anymore. They have to talk about it now that it's different.
Well, I know it's different, but that don't always mean they're going to go with what they should. I mean,
I guess if I had to hazard a guess at where it ultimately ends, do a thing where after this episode, everyone is like as segmented as possible. The group is like broken again. Quill has like no reason to be loyal to anyone. Final episode, we do something where like the 6 of them are more of a unified team that's set up for like, okay, now season 2 will actually be this group a real team for season 2.
I actually think it's just going to kind of not cliffhanger personally. I don't know, like, is this supposed to be like one whole season, or is this like just got cut off before they could order any more?
It got canceled. I think they planned to have a season 2, but it got canceled because of poor reception. I don't remember what I've heard about the ending. I think it ends sort of closed off, like, or at least with some finality, although I might be wrong. I don't know. We talk about it ending on a cliffhanger. I don't remember it.
Okay. So, I mean, if it's a complete season like Doctor Who or something, then yeah, it might end like you said, but if it's something where they were building up for like multiple seasons, I think it'll like end up cliffhanger, but we'll see.
I mean, I just feel like that's why you would end an episode like this so close to the end of the season, where everything, the team dynamic is worse than it's ever been. Like, the reason you do that is so that you can fix it in time to be all triumphant, like, this is how things should be, and this is how it'll be next season.
Yeah. I guess the last 2 episodes are going to take place in the future, I guess, because her hair was longer and she had scars on her.
I watched the next episode, which is like her side of things. It's not a time travel-y thing. We'll get to that.
I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah, it's a good episode. A real good episode of Class. It happened once. It'll probably never happen again. Let's take a moment to appreciate.
Okay. Everyone appreciate the one good episode of Class. Okay, I guess that's it. Bye.
Bye-bye.